Hello, everybody. This is Danny Made It, and I have a new guest on here this time. This time, a different one than the last. But I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do and where we can find you.
Hey, my name's Fisher Madsen. I run an Instagram page where I take photos of high school sports. I'm a photographer from UNL at Fishermadsenmedia on Instagram, and I don't even remember what my Twitter is. Probably something pretty similar. Just look me up. You can probably find me.
All right. So what we're gonna do here today, we're gonna go over Class B. We're gonna go over each and every matchup and give a little bit of a preview. He floats around. He goes to some Class B games, so thought this could be a good opportunity to get someone on here. So we're just going to go ahead and get right into it. We're going to start off with number one Bennington versus number 16 GI Northwest. Bennington coming in at 8-1 and GI Northwest at 4-5. Um, what do you got for this game?
The main thing with this game is Bennington and their super long win streak. They got like snapped by Omaha Skutt earlier. So, in my opinion, I think they're going to be really hungry and wanting to go to the championship and like prove that they're still the team to beat in Class B. Northwest had a pretty good win against York at the beginning of the season. Almost beat Hastings, which is another playoff team. But I think Bennington is going to be pretty tough to beat first round.
Yeah, of course, any number one seed most of the time, or it's going to be really hard to beat first round. And GI Northwest has already actually lost to Bennington, so I
Yeah,
think,
it's something like 44 to 7, I think.
yeah, I
Yeah, 44
believe
to
so.
7.
Bennington's always going to be in every single game, no matter what. Bennington has a punishing offense and defense. They're led by Will Gutz and Cooper Johnson will lead the offense, and then Tyson Fishman has 6 sacks on the season, and he needs to be accounted for if GI Northwest wants any chance in this game. But I do think Bennington is going to escape here with a win. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm taking Bennington. All due respect to Northwest, I don't think it's gonna be very close. I'm taking Badgers 49 to 3.
I like it. All right, we're gonna move on to the next game, which is number two Seward versus number 15 Lincoln Pewis. Seward coming in at 9-0, Lincoln Pewis at 5-4-5. My mistake. This is another rematch game. They already squared off, and Seward won that game 35-0. Um, in that game, Seward's defense held Lincoln Pewis to 35 total rushing yards with 1.5 yards per carry. So that defense really just performed very well. And then passing wise as well, they only allowed 36 reception yards. So I can't really see a route for Lincoln Pewis to win, but what do you have for this game?
Yeah, honestly, I saw Seward at the beginning of the season when they played Gretna East. I think it was something like 42-21 Seward. And I was like, I didn't really know what to think of them because they did have an early exit in the playoffs last year, but they've actually played really well. Let's see. They beat Scotts Bluff by one, and Scotts Bluff is a team I'm really high on. I've seen them as well, and I think they're pretty legit. Ed Knott, I think he's their running back. He's a baller. Um, and Treston Haas throws for like 200 yards a game and can run the ball. Like they're a really solid all-around team. And I don't know how they're going to compete against Bennington, or we'll move on to like Scott and Elkhorn North later. I don't know how they'll stack up against them because they haven't really played like the Omaha teams yet. But they're a very interesting team and they've got some good wins. Pius, what I got for Pius is that their record isn't like the whole team. Like they're better than their record shows. Like they've been competitive in a lot of their ranked games, but they weren't able to win most of them. And you got to be able to win games, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, in high school, 35-0, that's a tough score, but in high school, it's really not the end of the world if you score 35-0. I just think that the Seward defense showed so much in that first game that I don't think that there's really too many
Yeah.
adjustments you can actually make.
Yeah. I'll respect the Pius. Like they're a good group of players, but I got Seward 39 to 14.
Yeah, I think Seward's going to win and a relatively close score to that. So we're gonna go on to number three, Scott Catholic versus number 14 York. Scott 8-1 in this game, and York is 5-4. This is a as of late, you didn't really expect Scott to be this hot right now, especially with Bennington towards the end of their schedule, but they actually snapped Bennington's win streak in dominant fashion, and maybe not dominant on the box score, but when you look into the game a little bit deeper,
Right.
a lot of Bennington's success was on special teams. I believe they had two or three blocked PATs or punts. I can't remember exactly, but they held Bennington under 5 yards per carry, which is Bennington's at their best when they're running the ball. So I think that's a really big accomplishment for them. And then their quarterback wide receiver duo is pretty unstoppable. They're towards the top five in the state for passing yards and receiving yards. That's Dylan Van Dyke and Joe Kolga. Those guys are awesome. And York is struggling as of late. So what do you have for this one?
Scott's really good. I saw him at the beginning of the season. They were playing Lincoln Standing Bear. But I remember seeing like, oh, dang, this team is probably gonna make moves. Like, neither team had stats on max preps, but their only loss is to Elkhorn North, who's another one of those top Omaha teams. York lost like three straight lost to three straight playoff teams to close out the season, and they haven't beaten a playoff team since Hastings, and that was by a field goal at the beginning of the year. And I think Scott is hot, and they're hungry to prove themselves at Memorial. I know they lost the title last year to Bennington. I don't quote me on this, but I think it was the same way the year before. No, it wasn't the same the year before. But they lost to Scott last. They lost. Scott lost to Bennington last year, and I think they're gonna want the chance to see him again. I think Scott's gonna win like 42 nothing.
Yep, I also have Scott here. All right, we're gonna head over to number four Scottsbluff versus number 13 Gretna. Scottsbluff 8-1, Gretna 5-4. This is a very interesting game. Um, a lot of driving to do for Gretna. I'll let you start on this one.
Yeah, Gretna's the team. I wrote for the Gretna newspaper in high school, so I definitely have a soft spot for Gretna, but they have had a really, really weird season, in my opinion. So they beat Elkhorn High and Norris to open the season, but then they like lost like 55-22 to Blair, and then they got blown out by Elkhorn North, and then they closed out the season with a rivalry loss to Gretna East. And I don't know if I love what I saw from Gretna, but they do have a really good offense, led by Michael Knudsen at quarterback and his top target, Bryce Lakers. I can't remember how they pronounced it. Sorry, Bryce. So they're gonna be dangerous on offense. And I also saw Scott's Bluff, and I really like what I saw from them. They're a really run heavy team, and I think they're probably the best Western Nebraska team by far. And their only loss is to undefeated Seward by like 1 point, and Seward's really good. Scotts Bluff is going to want to run the ball a lot and chew a lot of clock.
Yeah, going along with your rushing, they have two guys over 100 yards per game, which is pretty cool. That's senior running back Desmond Smith has 135 yards per game, and then junior quarterback Nate Kelly has 101 rushing yards per game. The rushing attack is deadly, as you touched
Nate's
over.
also really Nate's a yeah, Nate's a great guy. He's also a really good basketball player too. Just want to throw that in there.
Yeah, Nate Kelly's
Anyway,
the
random,
basketball
sorry.
name. I'd think Nate Kelly associates with a good basketball player. But anyways, you also touched up on the Gretna offense, which is, I think they're a deadly unit, and I think that they also have their two guys, Knudsen and Lakers. I think those guys are just really dangerous. And when Gretna is at their top, they're getting Knudsen and Lakers into the game. Uh, they can run up the score, and I think Scottsbluff really has to lock it in and stop them. But I think that they're a dominant enough offense. If they get clicking, it's really hard to stay with them. And I think if they can get one or two stops on this run heavy team, that's going to just really mess the rhythm up. And you see, Scottsbluff isn't really a passing team, so if they get into passing situations, they're going to be a little uncomfortable. And that's where I'm going to go an upset here. I think Gretna is going to pull off a win against Scottsbluff, and I think that they're going to really pass the ball and make them uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm super duper high on Scott's Bluff. I may or may not get proven wrong, but another tipping factor for me is that drive. Like, I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but that's like 6 hours in a bus in a different time zone. It's gonna be like a weird environment for Gretna, I think. And I
Yeah.
got Bluff 35-14.
And that's a reasonable pick there. I do not hate it at all. I think it'll be a close game either way.
Exactly.
And we're gonna head over to a rematch of earlier in this season. This was one of the biggest games at the time as well.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
we got number five Elkhorn North 7-2 versus number 12 Elkhorn 4-5. I just want to start off by before I say anything about this specific game. Class B is one of the most interesting classes in Nebraska. I think it is the most interesting classes and competitive as well. I think that it's any given Friday night with these guys. It's really hard to predict. I think that to predict an accurate winner every game because it's any given Friday. So I'll let you start off on this one.
Right. Well, I mean, going off that even, like the top three teams in Omaha have like all beaten each other. Like Elkhorn North beat Scott beat Bennington, and then Bennington beat Elkhorn North. So, and then not even counting like teams like Seward and Scotts Bluff in that mix. But anyway, with Elkhorn North and Elkhorn High, Elkhorn North has two losses on the season. One was to Bennington, like I said, but the other one was to Elkhorn High. And they're Elkhorn High is kind of a confusing team. They have one win against the playoff team in North. And they also have Gretna East on the win, which is another playoff team. But then they lost 0 to 28 to Waverly and then 20 to 42 to Norris. I'm really high on Elkhorn North. They only had that one loss, and then to Bennington to close the season. But they blew out York and they blew out Gretna.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into a little bit of specifics of the statistics on that last game because it's very interesting to me. Some of the notes I have for Elkhorn is just that they had a really just dominant defensive performance. They had -1 allowed and on the ground last game versus Elkhorn North, and that's gonna set up. They completely eliminated their top two players, which was Alex Uchman and Jet Tinglehoff. They didn't have really any output in that game, so that kind of leads me to Kendall Greger and Hunter Rosenbaum. They need to really step it up because Elkhorn proved that they can eliminate your best guys. So you really need to have some output out of them. Not saying that they aren't able to do it because Hunter Rosenbaum did have, I think, 90 yards receiving in that last game. So I think if they can find success on those outside of the top two guys on that offensive roster, I think they can win this game. And I think that you saw last game they didn't really have any explosive plays. I think that they can squeeze out a couple, and I think that they're going to win this game.
You said Elkhorn's winning or Elkhorn North?
Elkhorn North.
Yeah, I got the Wolves too. I think Jet Tinglehoff is a really, really good back. And Ethan Beachy's pretty solid at quarterback. I think it'll be close, especially because it's like a rivalry type game.
Yeah.
So I'm not taking North by too much, but I got him by two touchdowns, 24 to 10.
Yeah, I could see the score going the opposite way that it went last time as well. So,
Exactly.
all right, now we're gonna head over to Norris, uh, Norris and Waverly. Number six Waverly 7-2 versus number 11 Norris, which is 6-2. This is a game of the week number two. I don't know. There's a lot of game of the week, a lot of rematches in here. The last game of this series was awesome. It was a 28-21 game. I think this is a really true 50-50 game. I'm going to get into some of the X's and O's here. Waverly ran the ball fantastic, and they kind of need to repeat what they did and add some small wrinkles in the pass game because I think if you kind of rely on the run too much, if you get stopped one or two drives in the game, that can really just mess you up, and those pass wrinkles could get you explosive plays, so you don't really have to be perfect all game. And then for Norris' side, I think they need to do the opposite of that. They threw the ball 35 times last game, and I think that they need to have a more sustainable rushing attack and limit some of the turnover opportunities. They didn't have any turnovers last game, but I really think that they have a good running back, which is Crew Moeller, I believe, that he needs more volume. That's what I think. So what do you have for this game?
Um, this is really interesting because they're both kind of like the um I think they're both Eastern Midlands teams. That game a week ago was really close. I like Jarrett Barons at quarterback for Norris. He's throwing for 245 yards a game. I saw him play. I think I saw him play in the Norris Waverly game last year, and he got hurt halfway through the game, and that kind of I think that lost him the game if I'm not completely mistaken, which I totally could be. I think Norris is going to pull out the win, but only because it's really hard to beat a team twice, especially like
Yeah.
that close in proximity to each other. But I think it's going to be really close, something like maybe 32-34, something like that.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Norris as well. I think that I like their upside and their ceiling on this because they pass the ball so much, and that gives them just way more room to create explosive plays. So I think I'm gonna
Right,
keep Norris on this one. And
right.
we're gonna move to our second to last game in this bracket. We have number seven Gering versus number 10 Gretna East. Gering 6-3, Gretna East 5-4. You're gonna start on this one. What do you got?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think it's really funny that both Gretna schools have to go all the way out west.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. Garing is another team where it's like I really don't know what they can do because they're from Western Nebraska and they haven't played teams like Gretna East has. Garing has a loss to McCook, who's a playoff team, and then Scotts Bluff and Hastings, and they don't have a win against the Class B playoff team. That loss to Hastings was a pretty big blowout game, and they got shut out against Scotts Bluff 35 nothing. And I am pretty high on Gretna East after I saw them beat Gretna last week. They're riding that high of beating crosstown rivals Gretna for the first time, and that is probably their best win. And they played Bennington pretty close, but it was a two-score game, which for a lot of teams playing Bennington, that is close. And they also came pretty close to beating Elkhorn North, but fell 27 to 31. East is pretty good on defense. Connor Sams is a great running back for them. Chase Grow is pretty solid at quarterback. They're a pretty good all around team, and I really like their coach, Justin Haberman.
Yeah, I think that going on with a little bit you said, I think that they're a really, really strong 10 seed. And I think that this is really unfortunate for a team that hasn't made the playoffs in I can't remember how many years, but
Been a
it's a big,
minute,
yeah, it's a big thing there. And I've noticed that they're embracing the playoff appearance, and it kind of just sucks that they got to go against a really strong 10 seed like Gretna East. Defensively for Gretna East, you got Frank Thomas. He's one of the leading in Nebraska for sacks. So he's just a really dominant defensive force. They had a rocky start 0-3, but as you mentioned, they were competitive in the Bennington and Elkhorn North games. And their strength of schedule helps them be battle tested in this one. And I think that, yeah, I think Gretna East has a pretty good chance in winning this game. I do like Gering's offense. They're pretty split run pass, which I think gives them more of an opportunity diversely. So if they can get Baron Williams going, their running back, I think they have a good chance. But I think Gretna East is just way more battle tested, and I think they're going to go on the road here and get a dub.
right? I don't know what to feel about Garing. Like, if you look at their schedule, there were a bunch of C1 teams and
Yeah,
Wyoming teams, and then Gretna East has faced some of Omaha's toughest teams.
yeah,
But an interesting factor is that East hasn't had a playoff win in school history. And I think this is the most interesting game in round one. I think Gretna East is going to be really motivated to win their first playoff game, especially coming off that high against Gretna. They got a lot of heart. Grayson Fisher, he's one of their receivers. After they won the game, he took a big Gretna East flag and put it down in the middle of Gretna's stadium, a la Baker Mayfield. And that team just has a lot of, I think that team is pretty driven, and I think they're going to want it more. I could see it in the way they played Gretna. Like they definitely wanted that win more, and I think they do the same against Gering. But I think it's going to be close. Give me like East 28-21.
yeah. I think either whatever team wins, it's going to be a really fun moment to see on social media because they're going to be
Right.
you go.
It's going to be a historic victory either way.
Oh yeah. And we're gonna go over to the final game in the Class B bracket, which is number 8 Hastings at 6-3 versus number 9 McCook at 6-3. What do you have for this game?
This is an interesting one. Hastings seems like pretty solid, what you would expect from Hastings, I guess. They lost to York early by a field goal, but since then they've beaten the teams they should, including a win against McCook, 38 to 23. They lost pretty bad to Bennington, and I think they also had a tough loss to Scotts Bluff. But then they closed the season beating Gering 41 to 14. And then McCook is another Western Nebraska team that's a bit of a question mark. They lost to Waverly and Hastings, but then they only lost to Scotts Bluff by 6 points. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up against Hastings.
Yeah, these 8 and 9 games are one seat apart for a reason. But I
Right.
Hastings, I like the offense they have. They're pretty pass heavy, and they also have a pretty good running back. I like the Hastings team a lot. McCook, as you said, they're interesting because last year they were actually a class below Class B, and now they're in the playoffs in Class B. So I think they weren't even significantly good last year either. So this is a pretty pleasant surprise if you're a McCook guy or girl, uh, whatever you want to go there. Yeah, I think Hastings has an advantage here. I like their wins as of recent. They didn't have a great performance against Scottsbluff, but they rebounded pretty well. Yeah, so I'm gonna take Hastings on this one. What do you have?
I'm gonna go back to what I said about the Waverly game, where it's really hard to beat a team twice. So
Yeah,
normally I would take Hastings pretty big, but I think it's actually gonna be a pretty close game. I think Hastings is gonna score the ball a lot. Last year in the playoffs, I was at the Hastings Seward game, and Hastings kind of ran away with it. So they're proven they know what it takes. Tucker Cynic is a really cool quarterback, a really cool player. So I like Hastings in it, but I do think it'll be close. Something like maybe 35-32.
yeah. There was one note on that game I kind of forgot. I kind of went over. Hastings will
Yeah,
need to run the ball a little more effectively in this one. Last game they didn't really, so I think they're gonna need a more of a stable run attack on this one. But yeah, so that's
yeah.
going to wrap up the bracket preview. But we're not done. We have a new segment that we started here recently as a fantasy football segment. So how this is going to work, we're going to alternate picks and we're going to have a friendly competition here and we're going to come back next week and we're going to see who won this. I'm going to keep track of the scores, but we're going to make a fantasy football team made up of a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end and a flex position that can be any position outside of a quarterback. So, out of Class B players, I do mention in this first round. So, we're going to go ahead and let the host get the first pick, like I always do. Who do you have for your first pick in this draft?
Me? Oh, my first pick. I'm a pretty big, uh, I'm a pretty big believer, in Ed Knott, out in Seward. He's a big play merchant. So give me Ed Knott for my RB1.
Yeah, he was definitely pretty high on my big board. I'm going to go ahead and cross him off. But for my pick, I am going to go with Will Guts from Bennington. I think that their matchup is really favorable, even though he might even just play the first half against the GI Northwest team. But I think
Yeah,
Will Guts, I think he's a good pick here for number 2. And now we're going to go back over to you. And
that's
who's
a
going
good
to be your
pick.
second?
Well, we just talked about Hastings like 5 seconds ago. Tucker Cynic is thrown for 214 yards, and the bulk of that is going to Keithan Krings, at receiver. And I really think they're gonna like really, really confuse McCook with their passing. So give me Keithan Krings.
Yeah, he's also pretty high on my big board. I'm gonna reference my big board just to give these guys a little
Yeah,
gas
you
up.
go for it.
Um, but yeah, I like that pick. With the matchups on here, I think that I think that picking is a little harder because you can't just look at the max prep stats. But I am going to go pretty chalk here. I'm going to go Smith from Scottsbluff, the running back. He gets a lot of volume.
Yeah, that's not a bad pick by any means. Um, I I was really torn up on my quarterback. I think I'm gonna take my quarterback now. I think I don't know if Gretna has seen a quarterback like Nate Kelly who can run the ball and he's also competent passing. But at the same time, Michael Knutson is, really, really good at playing football. Give me Knutson. We'll go Michael Knutson in my QB.
Yeah, that's a great pick because he's an explosive player, and if he really gets going, he's going to get you a lot of points. But
Right.
for my next pick, I'm going to take his number one guy. I'm going to take Bryce Lakers.
Bryce. Yeah, that's a good pick.
They've stressed getting him the ball every game, so I think it's a pretty safe bet to pick him up here.
Yeah. All right, give me a second. My whole internet has just stopped functioning properly, which I'm not really a fan of.
Oh,
Um, I Give me a second. Is that okay? I hope that's
yeah, you're
okay.
good. You're good.
Okay. Yeah, so I mentioned him earlier, but I really think Jet Tingelhoff is a name that doesn't come up as much as it should. So I'm gonna take him at my second running back.
Yeah, that's another good pick. Yeah. Um, this time I'm not gonna go. I'm gonna go ahead and fill my flex up here. I think this is a maybe a slept on pick that maybe most people wouldn't assume, but I'm gonna go Crew Muller from Norris. He's their number one running back, but he does get some receptions too, so I think that's a little bit of a cheat code. We are gonna go PPR, so that's what we're gonna do.
Well, that's fine. Okay. Honestly, he was on my list. It's gonna maybe try and sneak him. Um, my next pick. Um, I'm gonna go Chance Burton, a tight end. Can't
Oh,
really think of any other tight ends off the top of my head. He's pretty good.
yeah, he was definitely my number one tight end. I wasn't even gonna pick him because I was gonna wait for you to pick another guy, but he was I love his matchup in that Hastings game. That's unfortunate for me. So I got one more receiver
I
spot.
got I got both Hastings pass catchers,
Yeah, and they pass the ball a lot. So
both their top guys. I got Grings earlier, so yeah.
yeah, so I'm gonna have to go.
Anyway, who you got?
Alex Utchman from Elkhorn North would be the number one pick you would assume here, but Elkhorn did such a good job last game of just completely eliminating him from the game. So I can't. It's really hard to go here, but I'm gonna go Cooper Johnson Bennington. Maybe they get in a close one. They stay in with the third quarter.
Um, yeah, my next pick. I saw this guy earlier this year, and I really liked what I saw. Give me Joe Callega from Scott Catholic. I think he's gonna do really well, especially against no, not Pius. I think he's gonna have a really good matchup up against York. I don't think York has seen a passing. I don't think York can put up with a passing attack like Scott has.
Yeah, I made a really big mistake not putting him on my big board for whatever reason. They're
I
not on
mean,
they're not on max preps for whatever reason. So if you're a coach watching this, please come on.
we need your stats, guys. We need them.
But I do have two more picks, I believe, right? How many picks do you have?
I have. We're doing two flex, right? Oh
Just
no,
one.
I
Just
have
one flex.
I have both my flexes left.
You
So
just
yeah,
have we
two.
just have one flex.
Oh, we're just doing one flex?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Then I only have one pick left, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take the quarterback here just because I have two positions. There's only two players at. So I'm going to go ahead and take Nate Kelly from Scottsbluff just because of his rushing upside. I think that he's a steal at the quarterback position.
Yeah, that's a pretty darn good pick. Like I said, he was my other quarterback on the board. Um, gosh, I really like um I'm between a couple people right now, but I really like what I saw from Clay Gaithy from Gretna. Gretna's always going to want to have some sort of rushing attack, and I think he's pretty good. But I'm gonna take Nathan Axman from Waverly. Because Max Prep says he's pretty good, so I'm gonna go with him.
Yeah, and they do get a lot of volume there in Waverly. They love to run the ball. Not really a passing team at all. I think they had three passing attempts against that last game in Norris. So I think that's a really good bet taking Axman there. But for my last pick, Mr. Irrelevant in this draft, I'm taking Jaden Holston from Gretna, the tight end, because that's who I got. I think he's a either one or two best tight end. I like the matchup with Chance Burton a little bit better. Not necessarily a player. I haven't got a chance to watch them in person or anything, so I can't really comment on that. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna take him.
he's a really big target for Knutson. I think he's got some upside against Scott's Bluff, but I'm kind of mad, bro. We're not doing kickers or anything. Like, come on, kickers, bro. We gotta show love to the kickers.
Yeah, after this after episode, I can probably add it in there,
Yes, bro.
but Class B is just really stingy with their statistics, and they don't really put them up for sometimes. Like Seward, they haven't caught up on every single game, so and then
Right.
obviously Scott, they don't do stats at all. But yeah, that's gonna conclude our preview here, and yeah, appreciate you, Fisher, for coming on, and this was really fun. And I hope to see you next week for the results, and let's see who we got, and let's see
Let's
who
see.
wins our friendly competitions.
Yeah, I think I'm last place in like all of my fantasy leagues right now, so I think I'm probably cooked, but it'll be fun.
Yeah, just to end it out here, where can we find you, or where can the watchers find you?
Yes, so I'm on Instagram at Fishermadsenmedia. That's where I'm gonna be doing most of my stuff. Um, yeah, basically anything I do, I'm gonna put it up on there.
All right, well, again, thanks for coming on, and I hope everyone watching here had a nice time listening in. So we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Mm.